Thank you very much for being here. I'm Andrew Frey, in case you were wondering, and this is Commissioner Francis Suarez. We're honored to be here. The topics of urbanization and public policy and progressive political action are near and dear to our hearts, and so Commissioner Suarez is going to talk about Miami Matters, why Miami matters to him, and other Miami matters, such as the political context, some history and where we're at, and some of the other policy priorities that he has. I'm going to then jump in and talk about a specific policy initiative, the small building parking exemption, where that idea came from.
The bigger we've gotten, the more issues we have to contend with, certainly. And as we develop, development itself becomes an issue. And so we are trying to create nexuses between growth and development and transportation, which is a huge issue. Traffic is becoming an enormous issue in the city of Miami and in metropolitan Dade County. Again, our city is changing dramatically, it's changing rapidly, and we as a government have to do everything that we can not to be behind and not to be so reactive to that change, but to try to be proactive and get ahead of it to the largest extent possible. Just because you're pro-development doesn't necessarily mean you're pro-bigger, and doesn't mean you're pro-more expensive. And I think that is a lesson. If you're conscientious about what you're doing, you can do things that are pro-development, that are pro-real estate, but that are also progressive and that also help provide a need at market for those who are less fortunate in our city and in our community.
People feel threatened by development. Development itself can be a problem. Perception of development, the perception of traffic, change, bringing other different people into the neighborhood. There's a lot of opposition to development. And some of it's bad, and some of it's well-deserved. But this was the sort of climate that I was operating in as a zoning lawyer, is this adversarial position between developers and the community. And I always thought, is there a pattern of development that's contextual, that maybe wouldn't generate so much animosity? There's great neighborhoods all over the world that have these characteristics, that have small increments, dense but mid-rise buildings, distributed ownership, and adaptable, long living structures that serve the uses of the neighborhood as they evolve over the centuries. So that began to suggest to me that maybe there was something else that we should be building, or we should be getting good at in Miami. What is it that drove away this pattern of development? I began to think maybe it's the zoning. That was kind of the last factor I could think of. And so then I decided to run through the zoning code and see, okay, what's the first, if I'm a small scale developer, what's the first obstacle I run into? And at the time, I'm actually working for one of these very large suburban apartment complex developers. But in my spare time, I'm trying to think, okay, what product would I really love to be building? And how can I help that out? So I start nights and weekends running this experiment. If I'm a small scale developer, what's my problem with zoning? And the obstacle that I hit into was required parking. That was kind of the thought experiment that led me to, okay, we need a small building parking exemption. Should I do something about this? This would not have happened without Commissioner Suarez's insight into the political process. So all credit to Commissioner Suarez, it passed. Okay, and then we get to like the end of the movie, The Candidate, and we won. Now what? So now what? I had to build a building. So I put this deal book together, and then just real quick flip to the last slides. And attracted equity, attracted debt, got a lot under contract the month after the ordinance passed, closed later that same month. That was November of 2015. Got in for building permits and broke ground in July of 2016 on an 8-unit small apartment building with no parking.